Imagine this. The sun has just crested over the 7 hills of Rome. The air is still cold, but the smell of wood smoke and animal dung already fills your nostrils. The narrow cobblestone streets are slick with the remains of a night's rain. In the distance, the shouts of market vendors begin to break the morning's silence. Hawking fresh fish from the Tiber, warm bread, an expensive purple cloth only the nobles can afford. You a traveler from the future stand in the heart of the Roman Forum, the beating heart of the Roman Empire's power. Around you, thousands of people move like a tide. Senators in white togas, slaves with burdens on their shoulders, soldiers with faces as hard as marble. Everyone is busy. Everyone seems to know where they're going. You can only stare in awe and with a growing sense of dread. At first, Rome might seem enchanting. Magnificent buildings loom. The Colosseum, the Temple of Jupiter, triumphal arches carved with war reliefs. This is the center of the world, a place of unrivaled power that controlled lands from Britannia to Egypt. But in a matter of moments, you'll realize this city is not a tourist-friendly destination. It's a giant machine that grinds on with a brutal cruelty. Your very first step across the Forum is fraught with risk. The streets are a mix of mud, waste, and human refuse. The open sewer ditches occasionally overflow, carrying diseases that would make even a modern doctor shudder. A stray dog growls from behind a pile of trash, its yellowed teeth menacing. There are no vaccines, no antibiotics. One small bite could be a slow, agonizing death sentence. You turn towards a loud laugh at the street corner. A group of hardened thugs is staring at you intently. A foreigner like you with strange clothes and an odd accent is easy prey. Before you can even turn away, one of them is already approaching, grinning as he weighs a dagger in his hand. In Rome, there's no modern police force to come to your aid. City soldiers might pass by, but they only care about public order, not the fate of an individual. If your purse is stolen or your body is left in a ditch, that's your problem. And that's just the first hour. As midday approaches, the heat of the sun begins to bite. The cobblestones radiate light and a burning heat. You might think finding water would be easier. Rome has magnificent aqueducts, doesn't it? True, but drinking water isn't free, and anyone who looks weak or confused can be driven off, extorted, or worse, accused of being a thief. The scent of roasting meat from a street vendor tempts your empty stomach, but be careful. The food here isn't prepared with modern hygiene standards. The meat might have been sitting out overnight in the warm air, swarming with flies. One mouthful could introduce bacteria that give you typhoid fever or dysentery, diseases that, in the 1st century, were almost always fatal. Amidst the chaos, another shout echoes word that there will be a gladiator match at the Colosseum this afternoon. People cheer, rushing in a wave toward the giant arena. In your head, you might be tempted, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to witness history. But be careful. The surging crowds can turn into a human tsunami. The force of thousands of people pushing toward a single narrow gate is no joke. One wrong step, and you could be trampled, crushed, and never get out. Meanwhile, a rumor spreads. The emperor is in a rage. There's gossip about treason in the Senate. In this city, the emperor's wrath means sudden execution. Today, your head might be safe. Tomorrow, there are no guarantees. Even native Romans live in the shadow of absolute power. Now, pause and ask yourself, can you truly survive a single day here without vaccines, without clean water, without modern legal rights? Every corner of the city holds danger. Disease, crime, brutal politics, and bloodthirsty crowds. In the next few hours, you will see how the greatness of the Roman Empire demanded a terrifying price from its own people. One false move, even a cough in the wrong place, could be the end of your journey. Welcome to Rome, the center of the ancient world. Let's see if you can survive for even a single day. The merciless city, the sun climbs higher, and the golden light that was once so beautiful now reflects off stone walls, blinding your eyes. The air begins to thicken with dust and an indescribable smell, a mix of human sweat, animal dung, and rotting food festering in the street corners. This is where the real struggle begins. Rome was home to over 1 million people at its peak, a giant population for an ancient city. Imagine a labyrinth of narrow streets packed with people from all corners of the empire. Greek merchants, slaves from Egypt, soldiers from Gaul, and even adventurers from the far east of Asia. All are gathered, jostling and fighting for space. For a newcomer like you, this sea of humanity isn't just a crowd, it is a living obstacle. 1. The chaos of the streets. The alleyways are filled with shouting street vendors. They display silk fabrics, wine, salted fish, and cheap jewelry. Your every step invites a suspicious stare. Your foreign clothes and strange appearance make you look like a walking gold coin. The cunning hands of pickpockets are waiting for the moment you become fixated on an exotic sight. Horse-drawn carts and grain wagons rattle by, adding to the noise. There are no traffic rules. Priority goes to whoever is bold enough to push through. A donkey, loose from its reins, gallops down a narrow alley, crashing into anything in its path. One wrong step, and your bones could be broken, with no ambulance to come to your rescue. 2. The smell and the filth. In ancient Roman sanitation was advanced for its time, but advanced doesn't mean clean by modern standards. Open sewers flow along the streets, carrying household waste and human excrement to the Tiber. In the summer, the flow is slow, and the pungent smell is overwhelming, making you dizzy. Garbage piles up in the city's corners. Leftover vegetables, animal bones, rotten fabric scraps. Giant rats, the size of kittens, roam freely, their sharp teeth gleaming in the light. Diseases like typhoid, dysentery, and cholera lurk in every drop of dirty water. Without antibiotics, even a minor infection could be deadly. 3. Disaster-prone tenements. Many of the poor live in insulae, multi-story tenements built from cheap wood and brick. These buildings are fragile, cramped, and often over capacity. The hallways are dark, lit only by oil lamps that are prone to causing fires. At night, residents light hearths to ward off the cold, and a single spark can ignite a wooden wall. Large fires are not uncommon. Once a fire starts, the city winds quickly turn it into an inferno that devours entire blocks. There are no modern firefighters, only squads of slaves with buckets, who are rarely able to contain the blaze. 4. Water, a source of life and threat. You might find hope in the aqueducts, the Roman engineering marvels that bring water from the mountains. But the drinking water isn't automatically safe. The pipes were made of lead. The poison from this heavy metal slowly accumulates in the body year after year. Native residents may have some immunity, but for a newcomer, headaches, vomiting, and weakness can appear in just a few days. To get water, you have to queue at a castellum, waiting for your turn while jostling in the crowd. In the middle of the throng, a sudden push could send you to the ground. No one stops to help. Everyone is busy getting their water home before the supply runs out. 5. Crime at every corner once the sun leans to the west. The dangers change form. Street thugs, known as latrones, stalk the dark alleys. They won't hesitate to use a short nefapugio to steal your belongings. Victims rarely get justice. Roman courts protect full citizens, But foreigners don't have the same rights. If you report a crime, you're more likely to be accused of causing a disturbance yourself. 6. Fragile health. Even if you manage to avoid pickpockets and sewer-borne diseases, the air itself can be an enemy. Smoke from thousands of hearths fills the sky, making your lungs ache. Roman doctors relied on the theory of humus, the 4 bodily fluids, and the treatments they offered were more like dangerous experiments: incisions, cauterizing with hot irons, or poisonous concoctions. The day is only half over, yet your energy is drained. Hunger sets in, but finding safe food feels like a deadly lottery. You consider the hard bread sold on the street might be moldy. The cheap meat could be yesterday's leftovers. As afternoon gives way to evening, the sky turns a reddish. In the distance, the roar of the crowd from the Colosseum echoes. Cheers mix with terrified screams, a sign that the gladiator fights are reaching their climax. Some residents run toward the arena, while others choose to return home before night brings even more dangerous darkness. When the oil lamps begin to flicker on, a new threat is born. Without proper lighting, the city becomes a labyrinth of shadows. The sound of footsteps following your every turn makes your hair stand on end. This is where Rome shows its true face, a city of magnificence, yet one without mercy. Deadly politics and power. The sun has begun to set, and the shadows of marble pillars stretch long across the Roman Forum. While merchants close their stalls, the political pulse of the city quickens. This is the empire's heart, the Senate, the emperor's palace, and a network of power that can elevate or destroy anyone in an instant. 1. The shadows of the palace. Atop Palatine Hill stands the Domos Aurea, the magnificent palace that serves as a symbol of the emperor's opulence. From here, commands flow like lightning: war, new taxes, sudden executions. The emperor is the living law. His single order can send entire legions across a continent or ignite fear among the senators. Yet, absolute power also means absolute paranoia. The emperor is always on guard against betrayal from ambitious generals, cunning senators, or even members of his own family. The annals of Roman history are stained with palace blood, from Julius Caesar stabbed by his friends to Caligula murdered by his own guards. Tonight, whispers of a coup are circulating once more. As a newcomer, you are nothing more than a speck of dust in the eyes of the ruler. But in a city where every whisper can be interpreted as a conspiracy, even dust can be trampled. 2. The Senate, a battlefield of words and daggers. The Roman Senate is often depicted as a wise assembly, but in reality, it's not far from a gladiator arena. The senators, the patrician class, fit not with swords, but with intrigue, bribery, and false accusations. If two factions are in conflict, they won't hesitate to frame a neutral party. A foreign newcomer who happens to witness or overhear a secret conversation could be accused of being a spy. Roman law demands proof, but proof can be fabricated with fake witnesses or forged documents. Once your name is on a list of suspected traitors, your fate is sealed. Torture to force a confession, or a public execution as a spectacle. 3. The Praetorian Guard, the double-edged sword of power. Amidst this chaos stands the Praetorian Guard, the elite force tasked with protecting the emperor. Their armor gleams, their discipline is intimidating, but their loyalty isn't to the law, it's to whoever pays the most. History records that they once overthrew an emperor simply for a better bribe from another candidate. For a foreigner who wanders too close to their barracks, a soldier's sharp gaze is a warning. Don't get involved. If they become suspicious, a single Short command is enough to have you dragged into an interrogation room without due process. 4. Brutal punishments. If you're arrested on political charges, the trial is just a formality. Punishments vary. Public flogging, forced labor in the silver mines of Hispania, or execution. The forms of execution are also varied. Beheading, crucifixion, or for those deemed enemies of the state, being thrown into the arena to face wild beasts. The common people watch executions like a play. Their cheers echo as blood stains the sand. There is no mercy for foreigners. The punishments are often harsher to demonstrate the state's power. 5. Corruption as daily life. Corruption is not an exception. It is the system. Market taxes, road fees, and petty bribes to officials are routine. Without a silver coin slipped into an official's hand, a trade permit won't be issued, a report will go missing, and your personal safety won't be guaranteed. You might think you can play it clean, but in Rome, moral purity is just a weakness. Without a bribe, you won't get water from the public pipes or protection from the thugs. Refusing can get you attacked or reported on false charges. 6. A night of fear as night creeps in. The political tension is palpable in the air. Rumors circulate. A prominent senator was found dead, his chariot crushed in a narrow street. People whisper about poison, the favorite weapon of the elite. Another rumor says the Praetorian Guard is searching for a foreigner who was seen near the location. The description is vague, but it's enough to make you uneasy. Every step on the cobblestone street sounds louder than it should. The shadows of marble statues look like silent spies. You realize one thing. In this city, there is no room for error. Politics isn't just a game for the nobles. It swallows anyone who happens to stand too close. The day is over, but Rome never truly sleeps. The light of torches dances on the walls of the temples, illuminating the tense faces of the guards. Behind the magnificence of the architecture and the roar of the arena, power boils like a volcano ready to erupt at any moment. And you, an outsider with no protection, are standing right on top of it. Bloody entertainment dusk casts a coppery red glow over the city, and the roar of the crowd echoes from the direction of the Colosseum. The giant structure, a stone ring nearly 50 meters tall, looks like a massive crown reflecting the torchlight. This is where the heart of Roman entertainment beats and where blood becomes a spectacle. 1. The human tide towards the Arenis. Thousands of people stream like a river toward the gates of the Colosseum. Old, young, rich, poor all crave the same sensation. Watching humans and animals fight to the death. You're squeezed in the throng, your breath caught in your chest. The air is a mix of sweat, wine, and a palpable, thick tension. Food vendors shout, offering roasted nuts and cheap wine. Small children stand on their toes, trying to peek inside. The shouts of guards beating their iron shields echo, organizing the queue so it doesn't descend into chaos. A hard shove, and you almost fall. If you were trampled, no one would stop to help. 2. Social class in the stands in Rome. Even entertainment is a reflection of power. The emperor and senators sit on the honorary podium closest to the arena, their marble seats adorned with carved deities. Around them, knights and nobles sit a little further back. Ordinary citizens scramble for space on the stone benches that rise higher and higher. Slaves, women, and foreign newcomers, like you, are pushed to the very top, where the night wind bites and the view of the arena is obstructed by pillars. But that physical distance is no protection. In Rome, a riot can break out at any moment. A small dispute over a seat can turn into a bloody brawl, and the armed guards won't hesitate to beat anyone deemed to be a disturbance. 3. The first contest, wild beasts say. Deafening roar erupts as the iron gates below the arena open. Lions from Africa, leopards from Asia, and even a massive elephant stride out, their eyes reflecting the torchlight. These animals have been starved for days to make them more ferocious. The praetor, the organizing official, gives a signal, and the Hunters Venatora Center, with spears and nets, the fight begins. A lion's body pierced by a spear screams, and blood splatters onto the sand. The crowd cheers every time the blood gushes higher. For the Roman citizens, this isn't just a spectacle. It's a statement of power, that Rome is capable of conquering the wilderness and bringing beasts from the ends of the earth to be its playthings. 4. Gladiators, icons, and victims. After the last animal falls, a long trumpet sounds. It's time for the main stars, the gladiators. They come from various backgrounds, war slaves, criminals, and even some volunteers seeking fame. Their bodies gleam with oil, their muscles honed by years of training at fighting schools. Two gladiators stare at each other. One wears a heavy helmet and a large shielder, Mermilitha. Other is nimble with a net and a trident. The clang of sword on shield electrifies the air. Every strike is met with cheers or jeers. When one falls to his knees, the eyes of the entire crowd turn to the emperor. The emperor raises his hand, thumb up or down. One gesture determines life and death. Today, the thumb slowly points down. A thunderous cheer erupts as a sword pierces the chest of the defeated gladiator. Warm blood flows onto the sand, absorbed without a trace. Point 5. Public executions for Rome. The show isn't complete without an execution. Between fights, political prisoners or criminals are released into the arena. Some are tied to posts to be devoured by animals. Others are forced to fight gladiators with no weapons. The audience watches with enthusiasm, as if it's a comedy. Some even throwing bread in mockery. Here, death is entertainment, not a tragedy. Every victim's scream is drowned out by the laughter and cheers of thousands. 6. A night of blood. As the moon rises, the show ends. The arena's sand has become a reddish mud. Slaves rush to drag the bodies of animals and men to the underground gates, while the crowd disperses with satisfied faces. Some are singing, others are betting on which gladiator will win tomorrow. You exit with the flow of the crowd, your legs feeling weak. The images stick in your mind, the desperate eyes of a lion, the last scream of a gladiator. In the modern age, this would be considered inhuman cruelty, but for the Romans, this is entertainment. This is identity. Outside the arena, the dark streets swallow the city again. The last echoes of the cheers slowly fade, replaced by the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer and the howl of a dog. You realize this is just one night of a long routine governed by blood and power. The brutal reality of daily life. The next morning dawns without mercy. The sky is still pale when the bells of the Temple of Jupiter echo across the city. People start to move, and you, though your body is still weary from the shock of the night before, are forced to follow the current. In Rome, those who are slow get left behind, and those who are left behind can come to harm. 1. A deceptive breakfast. For most common citizens, breakfast is nothing more than hard bread dipped in watered-down wine or cold grain porridge. For a modern stomach, it's bland and hard to digest. The bread is sold at small stalls, coated in a layer of street dust, and the fingers of vendors who have never known soap. Flies alight on it, leaving behind bacteria if you're hoping for fresh fruit. Remember, fruit that looks ripe is often sprayed with spoiled wine to make it shiny. It can cause severe stomach upset. The water is even more dangerous. Public wells are contaminated with waste. while water from the aqueducts contains lead from the pipes. The metallic taste stings your tongue. Native residents are accustomed to it, but for a body that isn't immune, headaches and nausea are only a matter of time. 2. Market and gambling after breakfast. The open market, the Muselimis, a blur of color and chaos. Merchants from North Africa offer spices. Greeks sell silk fabrics, and pale-skinned slaves from the north offer their own labor. Every transaction is filled with shouting and jostling. In the market's corners, gambling tables are swarmed with people. Gambling is a favorite pastime, but also a trap. Losers who can't pay are often forced into temporary slavery or beaten. A foreigner who wins too much can be accused of cheating and beaten by the mob. 3. The misleading public baths. Midday approaches. Citizens flock to the thermae, the public bath complexes that serve as social centers. At a glance, this seems like a refreshing place. Pools of hot water, cold water, and fragrant steam rooms, but the cleanliness is deceptive. The water is rarely changed. Dirt, sweat, and diseases accumulate. A small cut on your skin can be a gateway to a serious infection. Additionally, bathing here is also an arena for gossip and politics. A wrong phrase could be interpreted as an insult to the emperor. The ears of spies are everywhere, waiting for careless words to turn into a report point for exhausting work. Most of the poor work hard for inadequate wages. Port workers lift grain sacks as heavy as their own bodies. Stonemasons chisel marble until their fingers crack. And mine slaves work in darkness, inhaling metal dust that ruins their lungs. There are no official working hours. The sun is the clock, and the overseer's whip is the alarm. Accidents are considered common. If a laborer is hit by a rock or falls from a horse, there is no compensation. Disabled slaves are often discarded or sold cheaply. Even free citizens get little aid. Doctors are expensive, and the potions they offer are often more dangerous than the injury itself. 5. A night that is never quiet as dusk falls. The city changes again. Torches are lit, but darkness still dominates. Thugs lurk in the alleys, taking advantage of the long shadows. Drunks from the taverns cause a ruckus, and fights can break out at any moment. You walk home past the fragile insulae. The smell of hearth smoke blankets the air. Every single spark that falls onto a thatched roof can ignite a major fire. Residents still light their fires without worry. They are used to it, even though they know the danger. In the distance, the sound of flutes and loud laughter echoes from the brothels. The sex industry is a legal business in Rome, but sexually transmitted diseases know no law. Without modern medical knowledge, one night of pleasure could end as a lifelong sentence. 6. The hidden fear. Perhaps the most suffocating thing is the fear that never goes away. It's not just a fear of disease or crime, but of the system itself. The emperor can issue a decree that changes the lives of many people in an instant. New taxes, the banning of a certain religion, or even mass expulsions. The voice of the people means nothing. Daily fate is in the hands of people you've never even met. As midnight approaches, when you finally find a place to rest, perhaps on a cold wooden floor, your mind races. All day long, you've avoided pickpockets, fought off nausea from the drinking water, and hidden from the gaze of the guards. This is just a normal routine for a Roman citizen. For them, suffering is the backdrop of life. For a newcomer like you, it is a relentless test of survival. 10. Ini adalah terjemahan teks ke dalam bahasa Inggris Slavery and Social Cruelty. The third morning reveals Rome's darkest face. If yesterday you could still pretend the city's harshness was just a daily challenge, today that illusion crumbles. behind the grandeur of the temples and military triumphs. This empire stands on the suffering of millions who possess no rights whatsoever. 1. The economic engine driven by slavery was not just a supplement in Rome, it was the backbone. From the port of Ostia to the vineyards of Campania, slaves were the living machine. They hauled water, mined metal, built roads, and served in the homes of the nobles. It is estimated that 1/3 of Rome's population were slaves. They came from all corners: Gallic prisoners of war, educated Greeks, sold by their masters, and even Romans themselves unable to pay their debts. Ethnic differences disappeared in the face of status. Once enslaved, a human was simply property. You witness a slave trader in the Forum Boarium. The man examines a terrified young body, checking teeth and muscles as if inspecting a horse. A mother cries as her child is separated from her. Her tears move no one. In this city, tears have no value. Point 2. Legalized violence. The law granted owners full rights over their slaves. A whipping, chains, and even execution could be carried out without a trial. There are stories of masters crucifying their slaves for just losing a silver plate. Collective punishment was also common. If one slave escaped, the entire household could be put to death as a lesson. For a newcomer, this sight is horrific, but for the Romans, it was routine. They believed that power must be maintained with fear. Slaves were considered vocal tools, instrumentum vocale, equivalent to kitchen utensils. 3. Educated slaves, gladiator slaves. Not all slaves did manual labor. Some who were educated became teachers or secretaries. Ironically, some were smarter than their masters, yet still had no rights. A Greek slave could write beautiful poetry for his master's child, but if he tried to escape, his fate would be the same as a mine slave, a whip or death. On the other hand, gladiator slaves were forced to fight for public entertainment. Gladiator schools trained them like soldiers, giving them just enough food to stay strong. The promise of freedom after years of victories was often just an illusion. One fatal injury erased everything. 4. The threat to free people for the poor. The specter of slavery always loomed. Unpaid debts could lead to someone being sold into slavery. Nexum, slavery due to debt. It was not uncommon for a head of a family to mortgage himself to save his children from starvation. A newcomer like you, with no social network or protectors, is even more vulnerable. One mistake, a small debt, or a false accusation could turn you into an item for sale in the slave market. 5. Legal injustice. While the elite indulged themselves with wine parties and lavish banquets, the common people lived in a cycle of taxes and punishment. Roman law made a clear distinction between civic citizens and non-citizens. A senator who committed murder could be honorably tried. A slave who stole a piece of bread could be crucified. Corruption exacerbated the situation. Judges could be bribed, and witnesses could be bought. For you, an outsider without status, justice is just an empty word. 6. Blood-drenched rebellions. Once in a while, desperation exploded. Slave rebellions, like the one led by Spartacus a few decades earlier, shook the empire, but every resistance was met with even greater cruelty. Thousands of slaves were crucified along the Via Appia, their bodies left to rot as a warning. The stench of death lingered for weeks, deterring anyone from attempting a similar feat. As dusk approaches, you see a new convoy of slaves arriving from the eastern provinces. Their faces are blank, their hands are tied, their steps are forced. Among them might be scholars, soldiers, and even children. In the eyes of Rome, they are all the same, commodities. You stare at the scene with mixed feelings: anger, horror, helplessness. But within you, a bitter realization also grows that without their suffering, the magnificence of Rome you have witnessed would never have existed. Tentu, ini adalah terjemahan teks ke dalam bahasa Inggris, Dangers from within, and we sought dawnbreaks, but the light of the Roman sun brings no sense of safety. Every corner of the city holds danger, not just from men, but from forces far greater, nature, plagues, and enemies that are always lurking. 1. A city of wood and fire, Rome is famous for its magnificent architecture, but the majority of its residential buildings were insulated apartments made of wood and cheap brick. The walls were fragile, the floors creaked, and small kitchens always had a fire going. A single spark could be the start of a catastrophe. History records great fires. The fire of 64 CE that devoured almost 2/3 of the city. The summer wind accelerated the blaze, and residents trapped on the upper floors had almost no way out. The city's watchmen were often unable to stop the fire. They were too busy saving the private warehouses of the nobles tonight. As a strong wind blows, you smell smoke from a distance. The shouts of fire make your heart pound. People are running, grabbing what belongings they can. It doesn't matter if you are a citizen or a newcomer. The fire consumes all without discrimination. 2. The unseen plague. Fire doesn't kill you. Disease might. The aqueducts were sophisticated, but the sewage system was poor. Drains were clogged, rats roamed freely, and flies spread disease. Typhoid fever, dysentery, and malaria were routine threats. When the Antonine Plague erupted in the 2nd century CE, thousands of people died every day. Physicians could only offer herbal concoctions or prayers to the gods. There were no antibiotics, no vaccines, for a body not accustomed to local germs. Like yours, one gulp of contaminated water could trigger a fever in a matter of hours, and once you're sick, you have no home or family to take care of you. The plague is a silent death sentence. 3. Barbarian raids and state enemies. The Roman Empire was never truly at peace. On its borders, barbarian tribes waited for an opportunity. The Goths, the Huns, the Parthians, and dozens of others, while the main armies were fighting far away in the provinces. News of looting and sudden raids often reached the ears of city residents. When the enemy approached, panic would strike. The city gates were closed, but no wall, no matter how high, guaranteed safety. Ordinary people could only hide and pray that the legions would return in time. You hear whispers of a gang of robbers that managed to break through the outer fortifications. The night becomes tense. Even the city guard is not enough to calm the fear of the masses. 4. An empire prone to accusations. But threats don't only come from outside. Roman politics is like a minefield. An emperor who feels threatened won't hesitate to accuse anyone of treason. Senators, merchants, or even common people. One statement considered insulting to the gods or the emperor can trigger a charge of maesta's insult to the state. The punishment, it could be exile, forced labor, or execution. False accusations were often used to eliminate business rivals. Without connections, you are easily made a scapegoat. 5. The unpredictable hand of nature. Even the earth itself isn't always friendly. Earthquakes shook the Italian peninsula multiple times. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE swallowed Pompeii and Herculaneum in an instant, blanketing the city in hot ash. The Romans knew they lived on disaster-prone land, but pride masked their fear. When the ground suddenly shakes, people can only scream and run. There's no early warning, no evacuation plan. 6. Fear that becomes a way of life at the end of the day. You sit on the murky banks of the Tiber. The current reflects the pale moonlight around you. The city never truly sleeps. Shouts, the sound of horse hooves, the clang of iron. You realize that there is no truly safe place. In Rome, danger is not an exception. Danger is a daily reality. Every citizen, from slave to senator, lives with the awareness that tomorrow could be the end. Why we could never survive the day slowly comes to an end, and the city of Rome is wrapped in the golden yellow light of dusk. In the distance, the magnificent temples and marble statues exude a deceptive beauty. From afar, Rome appears as a center of culture and progress, a civilization we admire in history books and films. But after enduring a full day therewith, the smell of smoke, the dust, the shouts, and the constant, haunting fear, you know just how dangerous life was. The modern body, the ancient world even without gladiator fights or barbarian raids, our bodies, accustomed to modern life, simply wouldn't be able to cope. The drinking water contains lead, the food is contaminated with bacteria, and the air is filled with wood smoke. The Romans' immune systems were trained from birth. Ours are not. One sip of aqueduct water might be enough to trigger a fever that kills you in a matter of days. Medical practices were also far from safe. Without antibiotics, a small cut could fester and turn septic. Herbal medicines were often unknowingly mixed with heavy metals or poisons. A simple toothache could end as a fatal infection. The fear that never subsides more than just the physical dangers. The mental strain is the hardest test. In Rome, there were no legal guarantees for a foreigner. Slip up with the wrong word in a conversation at the baths, and you could be suspected of insulting the emperor. Without a family network or a patron, your fate rests in the hands of whoever happens to be in power. Every hour in that city is a gamble. A fire could consume a neighborhood, a plague could swallow thousands, or a political decision could get an entire district punished. There was no place for the safe zones we know today. A grandeur built on suffering. The beauty of the Colosseum, the grandeur of the Forum, and the sturdy stone roads were only possible thanks to the sweat and blood of slaves. The empire we admire today was built by millions of people who never got to choose their own destiny. Without that suffering, Rome would never have achieved the glory we worship. Admiring Roman architecture and literature isn't a mistake, but it's important to see the reality that this glory was born from massive injustice. The wealth and luxury of a handful of elites were paid for with immeasurable suffering. A mirror for the modern world. Why is this story important? Because it reminds us that progress is no guarantee of compassion. Technology, law, and art can flourish, while cruelty remains the foundation. Rome isn't just a thing of the past, it's a cautionary mirror. Every time we disregard human rights, tolerate inequality, or allow power to go unchecked, we repeat Rome's path, a magnificent civilization that ultimately collapsed not just because of external enemies, but because of its rot from within. A day that felt like a lifetime. If you were to count the time, it might only be 24 hours since you set foot in that city, but it feels like a lifetime. From the noisy market to the dangerous baths, from the smoke of the kitchens to the sound of the whip in the slave market, every second leaves a mark that is hard to erase. When you finally leave Rome, whether by a ship at the port of Ostia or simply in your imagination, you take home a bitter lesson: how fragile life is, how expensive freedom is, and how deceiving the glimmer of glory can be when seen only from a distance. Conclusion: the Roman Empire did indeed leave an extraordinary legacy. Law, architecture, literature, and ideas of governance that influence the world to this day. But a single day there is enough to test the physical and mental limits of anyone from the modern era. It's not just because of disease or violence, but because of the constant sense of uncertainty that safety, justice, and humanity could be stripped away at any moment. And that's why, no matter how much we admire the Romans, we would almost certainly never survive even a single full day in the heart of the ancient world's greatest empire.